Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Esposito, content strategist of Demand Gen Report, and I'm really excited to join you for this latest episode of the Killer Content Showcase series. And I'm thrilled to have today Amanda Fildes, who is with Grant Thornton. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into their Finney Award winning campaign. Amanda, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
So, what I find so fascinating about your Political Pulse campaign is that you used the 2016 election as kind of a launch pad for your campaign and as a way to really showcase, your subject matter experts and, of course, your brand's overall expertise. What made you and your team kind of decide this was the right strategy and the right approach for what you were trying to accomplish?
Sure. So ultimately, with any new administration comes new policies, right? So any business or business owner will have to understand those policies, understand what it's going to take to implement them and comply with them. So really, it all starts with it being a really important issue for businesses and our clients. So it's really kind of squarely in the types of things that we like to rally around.
Got it. So it definitely makes sense and aligns with, your target buyers and what they're kind of thinking and feeling, during these, somewhat uncertain times. But I have to ask because, politics tend to be a bit volatile or polarizing. Were there any concerns or fears really honing in on the election season given the crazy news coverage that was happening around it?
In a word, absolutely. I think it would be crazy to think that that wouldn't at least cross your mind that attaching yourself to a topic couldn't be, polarizing or ultimately, even a bit controversial. But I think ultimately, not just us, but our clients and people who own businesses and operate in businesses, at the end of the day, have to put all of that aside because it's going to mean that they have to go through a whole change management process. They need to cut through all the noise and understand what does it really mean to them and what's the reality of what it's going to mean for their business.
Got it. So even though there's a bit of that hesitancy, it's something that gave you an opportunity to differentiate and kind of stand out and say, here are the critical things you need to focus on. Here are the key trends, and of course, implications for your audience. And what I find most fascinating about this campaign is that you tried to use a lot of different formats and content approaches to, again, cut through the clutter and show what those key implications and key imperatives were, but also present them in a more compelling and engaging way. I have to ask, how did you go about finding what formats to test or use? And ultimately, did you find that there were any formats that resonated best with your audience?
I would say in the beginning, we relied heavily on written content. It's sort of a bias that we've always had. I think we've also really kind of built on that with starting with a little bit of everything else. We tried to fit the format that we felt was best suited for the topic. And then we did a lot of like test and learn along the way. We really wanted to optimize around what was working and really stop doing what wasn't. So it required quite a bit of agility given how quickly things were shifting and changing. So I would say we really almost started to fall forward at the outset and didn't have like a super purposeful plan about why we would pick a format, but we did iterate on that throughout and then kind of rallied around what was really working.
Got it. And what about amplification? Because, this was an ongoing campaign, like you said. So were there key go-to channels you used? Did you find your strategy changing or evolving as the campaign was progressing?
Yeah, so organic social was tricky, right? Because there was so much noise. So even hashtags and terms and things that would be quite relevant really had so much of a just overwhelming amount of information around them that it just made it a difficult channel to leverage. We, at the outset and throughout, have continued to use a lot of email. It's really one of our best ways to target our one-to-one and one-to-few lists when we know very specifically who our target buyers are. Since the Finney Awards, we have done some paid social with ongoing content that we've developed since then, and I think that has been a really strong campaign performance, and really being able to get down to those most salient points, and thinking about like how do we kind of like bubble up something that's valuable versus saying like X party released their point of view on tax reform. Well, everybody who's a C-suite buyer knows that already, right? So it's like getting through with something a bit more granular and something that explains a bit more what they actually need to know and what to do about it.
Got it, got it. And you talked a little bit about how, since the campaign spans, through several months, and of course in a way still continuing with your new content creation, there's that ability to kind of reflect, see what worked, what didn't, and change and refine as time went by. Can you go a little bit into what that process looked like for you? Because I know some organizations, they just want to go, right? They have their release dates, they have their goals in place, so they just want to keep things moving. How can you implement this test and learn process while still, adhering to those deadlines and ensuring that all of those tasks are completed?
Yeah, I think, one of the probably biggest lessons learned for us was to really think about the value exchange that we're approaching. So for example, if somebody's going to sit through a hour-long webinar, a valuable person, a high-ranking executive, they really have to be getting something extremely valuable. So I think that was one of our key learnings there. Also kind of boiling it down to scannable and visual content, things like listicles, like those are the types of things that we saw very quickly start to kind of rise to the top. And we, course corrected along the way to rally around those things. So I think one of the things that we actually did throughout is we might have some stuff that was in flight that we're like, it's not, we don't have the ability to address this topic in this way, in this fashion, like is there stuff we should just stop doing? So I think you have to have a little bit of flexibility in order to kind of make those quick decisions. And, given the amount of content out there and the amount of discussion, amount of things that were happening, it was, you're never going to be first, right? So you have to really break it down and make it the most relevant you can to that audience. So I think that was really great. And just having that flexibility to talk to our subject matter experts and say, listen, we're not going to say anything here that hasn't already been said, let's put this aside to go pursue something else. And I think that's really, it's great to have that collaboration with the smart folks in our organization.
No, that's great. And was there any pushback, in having those conversations? And if so, how do you navigate those conversations and ensure that everyone's bought into the strategy and trust your judgment as you kind of go through that process?
Yeah, I think, it could be easy to fall into the trap of, well, I set out to produce a thing and I want that thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think there is a lot of ownership that folks have, both us on our marketers, our content team, our subject matter experts, to do good work. And I think ultimately, if we ask ourselves the question, are we doing something that's really adding value to our clients and helping them get better educated, helping them kind of weed through all this mess, then, at the end of the day, we can go home and say we've done a good job. So I think those are the types of questions that you need to ask, and the conversations aren't always easy, but I think they're worth having.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're a few months from your Finney win and from, the panel that we first, met on when you were talking about the campaign. So I have to ask, looking back on the experience and of course the results, were there any results or findings that you're particularly surprised by, whether it was the topics that resonated best, the formats that worked best? I feel like there's always, you feel like your buyers, but they're always changing. So I was wondering if there are any interesting takeaways from that regard.
Yeah, I think, one of the lessons that, became really clear is like you can't predict policy changes or what they're going to mean, which feels like very narrowly focused on this campaign, but in many ways it's relevant to all types of content that you create, right? So every day business is changing, the environment we operate in is changing. So I think the biggest lesson is not to try to get so focused on what the original outcome is and kind of look at maybe what it is today, I think it really speaks to the speed that we need to have as content creators, not for the sake of running around like our hair's on fire, but rather making sure that we don't have, long-winded research reports that field for 2 years, and by the time we get the results, nobody even cares about them. So I really think having that right combination of flexibility and speed is one of the things that was really um, a good lesson to learn. And then I think also considering the size of the team that we're on is always really important for us. So when you're moving kind of fast and furious, which these situations really kind of create, we need to over communicate, over collaborate. And then don't be afraid to like stand up and say like, hey, is this really still worth doing? And if we can't come together to deliver something that delivers excellence to our clients, then it's not worth doing. And I think sometimes that's probably the most difficult lesson.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice there, Amanda, because again, I feel like every organization has a strategy or an action plan, and there's always that, I don't want to say fear, but that hesitancy to kind of stray from that plan, even if all the signs are pointing to maybe you should take a different direction. So I think seeing how your campaign progressed and the success that you saw, it really speaks volumes to that approach. So, but with that, you were talking about how, now that we are under a new administration, that, this strategy or, this content creation process or journey is continuing. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what the next stage is and what the key focal areas are for your content team as you continue into 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. So the program has really grown and expanded. We're collaborating with our integrated marketing leader.
Oh, Amanda, I think we lost you there. Can't hear you. Oh, looks like we're facing some technical difficulties. The audio just went out. Our experts here are going to jump in and see if we can fix it.
Hey, Alicia, I don't know if that did the trick or not.
Oh, yes, we can hear you now.
Terrific.
Right.
So
wait, hold on 1 second. Roman, are we back? All right, let's continue.
Okay. So I guess where I was starting to talk is really we're working with our integrated marketing leader for our tax team, and they have pulled together with one of our other content leaders a program that includes some in-person events. There's webcasts. We've done some partnership with Bloomberg on creating really interesting events with some of the policymakers so that business leaders can kind of come together and hear straight from the horse's mouth what their intent is. It's been a really interesting ride. Obviously, there's lots that could still come that we're following very closely, and that's it's always changing, always growing. So it's continued to be really exciting, and I think it's going to be an interesting rest of the year with trying to look at how all of these different issues are going to manifest for businesses and clients.
No, that's fantastic. And I love that you're getting some FaceTime there, with in-person events. I think a lot of times companies forget, that even though digital presents so many great opportunities to engage with buyers in that one-to-one fashion, sometimes just getting some FaceTime really makes an impact.
I had a conversation with somebody just the other day about, hey, like, how are we thinking about direct mail in our marketing campaigns? And it seems like I just got in a time machine or something. But really, I think there's so much of a deluge of email and other types of activities that sometimes that really terrific unboxing experience is really cool. So I think, in-person, direct mail, other of those types of tactics are not dead. I have a very heavy bias to digital, but it's always good to kind of take a step back and say like, hey, maybe we can really surprise and delight with an in-person event or something mailed. So I agree with you. It's a good thing not to overlook those types of activities.
Fantastic, Amanda. Well, I appreciate you so much taking the time out to speak with me today and share a little bit more detail about your strategy and thought process behind the campaign, and for dealing with those last-minute technical difficulties that live video always have. So thank you so much for taking the time out. And thanks everyone out there for watching this latest episode of the Killer Content Showcase series. If you think your content is killer as well, you're in luck. Nominations for the 2018 awards are now open. You can get more details at our website, b2bmarketing.exchange.com. Thanks again so much to Amanda and everyone out there for watching, and have a great rest of the day.